A couple months ago, I took a scuba trip up to the Iron Mine range of Crosby, Minnesota. With the dry suit and the insulation I was wearing, it took roughly 34 pounds of lead for me to sink. Most of my weight is primarily lead shot, which is stored in these small containers, and then finally everything is stored in this weight pouch. I take a few measurements and then see how large of a solid weight I can fit in the bottom of the sack. A solid rectangle comes out to about 16 pounds, but by the time I put the chamfer on there, it's going to be closer to 15 or 14. Before I go through the whole process of casting this into lead, I'm going to print this in 3D just to make sure it fits in the weight pouch. This print right here will cost me about $2.50 in filament. It looks like it fits perfectly into the bottom of the bag, so I need to head back to the CAD software and get this thing cut up. To get this weight poured as lead, I'm going to be using a process called sand casting. The first thing I'm going to do is rotate the weight, then slice the bottom half off. Once that's done, I'm going to lay down these four spheres. On the top half, they're going to be solid, and on the bottom half, they are going to be hollow. You'll see the reason these spheres need to be put in there as soon as we get to the sand casting process. Once I have both sides of it made, I'm going to need to lay them flat, then I'm going to export them as an STL file. Import the file into the slicer program. Looks like this print is going to take 10 hours and cost me $5.42. Once I have the piece ready to go, I need to make the sand casting sand. The sand casting mixture consists of sand and finely powdered bentonite clay. You can get that from a craft store, or you can take fragrance-free cat litter and blend it up. I'm not exactly sure what ratio I'm going to use between bentonite clay and sand, so I'm going to weigh everything so I know how to repeat the recipe. And yes, I did buy this blender specifically for this project. Unfortunately for the blender, it's never going to see food, and it is only ever going to be used to blend up clay. The first pass, I'm going to mix the clay and the sand together, hopefully in the appropriate ratios. Once they are mixed together, then I will go through and wet everything down. About halfway through, I got tired of using the spray bottle, so I switched over to the hose. With the casting sand made, now I need to focus on actually making the mold. Take the bottom half of the mold, flip it upside down, then coat everything with talcum powder. Take the 3D print and also give that a generous coating of talcum powder. And here you can see the purpose of those spheres that I made. This will ensure that I can perfectly line up the other half later on. Take the first half, lay it face down, and then pack it in with sand. Once the bottom portion of the mold is complete, flip it over, get everything cleaned up, add some talcum powder, get it all smoothed out, then we're going to add the other half of the mold. Then add the other half of the piece that we 3D printed that we want to cast into lead. Repeat the same process as before, but this time we are also going to add a sprue and an air relief hole. Unfortunately, once we separated the two halves, the plastic pieces that we printed separately stayed together. This caused a little bit of sand to come out with it, but we can get that cleaned up no problem. After we make a few final touches to the sand, we put the mold together, and now we need to head outside and start liquefying some lead. In total, this ladle can hold roughly 20 pounds of liquid lead. Once we have our 20 pounds of liquid lead melted, we scrape off any of the impurities off the top. Now we are ready to pour. The mold actually took more lead than I was initially expecting. Give it a little bit of time to cool off, then we're going to take it inside and disassemble it. Grab a large pair of channel locks, grab the screw, and get it pulled out. Set the lead aside to cool a little bit further. Now I'm going to take all of the sand, put it in this 5-gallon bucket for a later casting. Once it's had a chance to cool down a little bit, I'm going to grab the sprue, break that off, then take it outside, cool it down, and try to remove some of the sand. The easiest way I found to remove the lines that are made by the mold is simply take a hammer and pound everything flat. Repeat this process a second time, since we're going to need 2 of these. And with the lead weight made, it fits perfectly into the bottom of the weight pouch. These lead weights came out to about 14 pounds apiece, so we need to add an additional 3 pounds to get to our 17 pounds. Now that we have this lead weight made, I'm curious how much weight this bag can take. And now we can hold an additional 7 pounds of lead weight in this bag.